In this episode, we chat to Ashley Winning, mother of 3 who birthed her 3rd baby at home after having 2 caesareans. Ashley talks about the discrimination she faced as a plus-size woman and how she turned her trauma into her purpose, now supporting women to achieve a natural birth after caesarean. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Illuminate podcast. I'm your host, Eleanor Curry, and I just have the most amazing co-host. Tell everyone who you are.
It's Ashley.
It's Amanda Banks.
I'm just hanging out here eating my porridge and drinking my cup of tea.
Yeah, you just shop and listen, really, don't you?
Yeah. There's just so much wisdom that comes through here. I just enjoy being here for the chat.
Yeah, me too.
It's great.
Well, we do have a very special chat happening today. We've got an amazing lady joining us. She has actually done something that most women don't even know is possible. She had her most recent baby at home after not 1 but 2 previous caesareans. So that is absolutely amazing. I mean, the courage and conviction you have to do that is truly remarkable. So we definitely want to get into that story. But since then, she has actually gone on to become a very powerful and passionate birth educator and advocate. She's a doula. She runs a very popular podcast, the VBAC Homebirth Stories. And of course, she was in our most recent film, Born at Home. Ashley Winning, thank you so much for joining us.
Yay.
Thank you. That was a lovely introduction. Thanks. I feel really welcome.
You deserve it. You're
You
a
do.
lovely
Thank
lady.
Yeah, your podcast is amazing.
Yeah, to think a few years ago, we were in a park, you were pregnant, you were about to have your own experience.
That's right.
And you were, I mean, it was a fun experience, wasn't it? It was just, it's amazing how big this has grown and how the connections have blossomed and the friendships and, you know, the community, I feel like, especially with what you guys have created. So I feel really lucky to have been part of this amazing project. And thank you so much for everything that you were doing. I know, Amanda, you have been in the home birth scene for years and years and years. And Ellie, I know you were pregnant while you started this venture and you did not know what you were getting yourself into, I don't think. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I was going to go back to that actually because I really love asking this question to all the guests that we have on that were in the film. But obviously, like you mentioned, we were in a park, we were filming you know, had to go into those quite traumatic birth stories for your first 2. And then obviously we got to hear the amazing triumph that you had afterwards. But you would have known that you would have had to, you know, relive those births with us in front of a camera, sharing it, you know, with potentially a lot of people. I mean, we thought maybe just a handful, but turns out a lot. So why did you say yes to being part of the film?
I'm a storyteller and I learn the best through storytelling, and it is very natural for me to tell stories. And by stories, I mean sharing my experiences. And in return, I love to hear other people's wisdom and experiences. And I just felt really honored to have a platform. I did feel pretty good because I had my husband with me and he is my rock. And I felt really safe with you ladies. The fact that you were having a home birth after cesarean yourself, it made me feel less like I didn't feel judged at all. I felt like my biggest challenges have been being a bigger woman and wondering if people understand or if people feel like I haven't felt like I've had a space in the home birth community when I was having my free birth because I'm a bigger person and I had 2 cesarean scars and I had a special scar. And I thought I would be embraced when I went through that journey. I trained as a doula before I had my baby, and I started telling my people in my network, and I thought all doulas would be supportive of my choices and understand my story. And they would say to me things like, oh, I would never do that. You should birth in a hospital. And so I felt really excluded from the home birth community. I started to realize that women who are low risk, I found a lot of the time, and I feel like now that's changed quite a bit. Because there's been a huge change, I think, over the last couple of years. But when I gave birth in 2020, free birth was like a really taboo, not many women doing it. It was really like like only the hardcore sort of women like me who are more mainstream were not making this choice so readily, or it was really underground. And now I feel like there's a lot of women doing it. It's like a really popular choice from what I've seen. And there's a lot more support out there. There was like 5 doulas for me to choose in my area. There's probably like 100 doulas to choose in my area now for free birth as a choice. So it's been a huge rapid change. So there was a lot of judgment and shame for me that came into it. And I felt really alone from the home birth community, and shone out of it because I wasn't the low risk person. And I think it's okay when you've walked a path of being low risk and you've got the statistics and things behind you and you understand your journey. But a lot of the time there was that compassion kind of missing for people like me. And so it's been a bit of a journey and evolution for me to kind of find my voice, find my confidence, figure out what is important for me to share while worrying that people are going to call, like, don't do that, that's dangerous sort of thing. So this has been like a stepping stone for me, like sharing my story with you guys. And then there's like 2 years of growth in between. And I've been working with women. And then so finally, when the universe allowed this to be shown to the world, and in such a magnificent, I mean, it's in the world now. I thought it was just going to be Queensland wide.
Yeah. So did we.
At the time, I probably would have freaked out, you know.
Yep.
It would have been a big thing. But I had so much growth that by that time I was working with women overseas. I'd had all these connections in the UK and America. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like my friends can go see it. I've got family overseas. So for me, it worked out really well, the timeline and everything. And the universe really had my back. And I'm really grateful that I got to connect with you ladies and share my story. So thank you for allowing me that platform and for allowing representation of women like me, because we're often silenced. Bigger women are often not allowed space, or women who are not low risk in the home birth community sort of thing. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I was really grateful that you allowed that. And you also asked me, would I like my birth to be called a free birth as well? I've had a few questions from people like, why have they not put free birth on your birth? And I know Amanda came back to me and asked me, and I kind of just said, I'm not attached to the title of free birth. I did have a free birth, but I had a free birth because I didn't have a choice of a midwife. That choice was taken away from me. And while I think every woman, my big thing in life is women should have choice. People should have choice, and they should be able to choose what is the best and safest for them. And women like me don't often have choice. So we're left very disadvantaged and disempowered and vulnerable, and potentially we could be put in more dangerous situations without the kind of care that we want or need.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the questions that I was going to ask you. You know, if given the resources and opportunity, would home birth have been your first choice, or do you think you always would have ended up with a free birth?
Well, free birth is a home birth to me, but home birth with a midwife was my first choice.
Yeah.
And I reached out, and I was in the free birth world at that point because I was listening to free birth stories and listening to other people's stories, and I always thought they're really courageous, but I couldn't do that. That's too crazy for me. And I listened to more stories and more stories. And then when I went out to speak with midwives, I realized that I didn't have a choice, and that the people that I thought who were amazing, that everyone was saying, these are amazing people, they do this and that, I found that they didn't actually support HBAC after 2 caesareans. And so I was really like, who would support me? And no one would support me. I couldn't even get support from midwives for my prenatal care. So everyone was talking about how amazing midwives are. And I was really resentful and really angry. And I was like, it's really unfair for me, because everyone's like, midwives are amazing, they're this, they're that. But they were refusing care for me not because they didn't believe in me or trust in me, but because they had insurance challenges. They were worried about what could happen to their registration. And so I logically knew that, but my heart was broken because I wanted a midwife who was going to carry toast to me after I'd had my baby and who was going to come to my house and we were going to do little appointments with my daughters. And that was not an option for me. And there was an option to have prenatal care, but I would have to travel to like the north side and it was going to cost like a few $1,000s. So for the sake of having to do all those standard tests, I kind of wanted like a bit of a pick and choose situation. So I was able to find that sort of support through some random GP because it was COVID times and we were kind of doing telehealth. That worked out really well for me. I don't know how it would have gone if it wasn't COVID. But I was just really lucky that I just called, I was this random guy down the road and he would just say, here's a script. So I'd tell him what I would want. I want to have an ultrasound. I want to have this. And yeah, so I had to create it, but I had to have many challenging conversations with midwives. And some of them, I said, can you support me after the birth? Because you're not attending the birth. If I have a tear, can you come? And she's like, yep, that's cool. I can do that. So I found out about a midwife through a free birth friend, but that free birth friend was slim. She'd already had vaginal births. She'd already had a free birth. So that midwife was happy supporting her, but she was really worried about me. She's like, I think I should get you some air. And what happens if this? You need to learn like this and you need to do that. And I hadn't called her for that sort of advice. I'd called her just to see if she could support me afterwards. So I was kind of getting battered from all angles while trying to stay my path of free birth. And there was a lot of anger and resentment that I had to work out with like the home birth community as well. Because nobody talks about this sort of stuff. We talk about how like home birth is an amazing option. And I think it is. Like I would 100% choose home birth. I think it is. But I work with women who are like me. And so some of the challenges is that there's nobody out there kind of sharing those stories or some of those challenges that we face. And I just want to be real with people. Like, there are some challenges that women like me have to face.
I'm so glad that we had you on the film too, because we had so many people come up to us afterwards, like they were just so inspired by your story, and that's like, they came out saying like, oh gosh, I can do it as well. Like I could resonate with those the feelings and the experiences. And I can't wait to share your full interview as well, because we go, we talk about your previous births and your experience and the discrimination that you faced as well, which I think, like we're discussing, a lot of women do feel like that. So, and that is their experience. So yeah, I can't wait to share. And I think, it's so inspiring that you have, the confidence and the platform to share.
Yeah. And we hopefully, once this one goes out, it'll be a close period of time before we release, the full interview on YouTube as well. So definitely head over there. If you're listening to this one, head over to the YouTube channel shortly. And Ashley's will be on there as well. I think we did ask you when we were interviewing you, but refresh my memory, because this always makes me wonder, because I do understand some exclusion criteria for home birth, but things like, high BMI, I just don't understand that on its own. Is that the exclusion, or is it because it's a potential risk factor for other things happening, or what reasons do they give you?
Well, there was no explanation. It was just nobody explains themselves or gives you that information. I suppose at the time I wasn't asking those more in-depth questions. To know a little bit about me, like I had to face a lot of discrimination in hospital, and you'll hear that story when you listen to it on YouTube. So I'd already been battered and bruised by the system. And, I was having conversations with doulas, and, even a doula tried to convince me, who was a really free birthy doula, that I should have a birth in hospital. But one midwife was more than happy to support me with the risk factors I had until I said to her at the end, my size. And then she was like, oh no, that's too much. And I suppose it's like the stacking of all the things. So you've got a woman, I'm very honest with them, so I don't like hide anything or hold anything back. So you've got 2 caesarean sections, you've got a special scar, You have
It's a special
a
scar,
very
Sorry?
special scar.
Yeah.
Did you say you would like to know what that is? Yeah, so a special scar is when it's deviation from the normal scar. So the normal scar goes across. So mine actually goes across, and when they pulled out the baby, her arm apparently, because she was so far down the path, she was right the way down, they pulled her out, and this is a non-emergency, unneeded caesarean section. But again, the discrimination pushing me down, C-section. It ended up being like a life. It was a very traumatic experience. I lost 3.1 liters of blood.
Wow.
They tore my uterus down into my cervix the whole way through.
Wow.
So women have all sorts, depending on where the baby is and how the baby is positioned. You can have all sorts of different there's about maybe 8 different types of scars that you can have, and they've all got their own different risk factors. So ones that are going down have less risk factor than ones that are going up. And I had one that was going down. So the gynecologist, like the American Gynecologist and Obstetrician Board, still recommend, I think it was RANSCOG as well, say that it's okay to labour on that sort of scar. So if they put that in there, I was more than happy to go with that. I was like, if they say it's okay, then I'm okay with it. But when I had spoken with some private midwives who I was talking to them about my birth at a positive birth meetup, they said to me, like, they're going to be petrified with you. So I knew straight away, like, hospital birth. They didn't support me for one VBAC, just a VBAC. There's no way in hell they're going to support me for another one. So for one midwife, it was I think it was a stacking, but I have spoken to other people, and they said that she is a bit size. She does discriminate against size. So there are people who have biases against bigger bodied people, and I suppose we all have our own bias, or we have our own experiences of a type of person that isn't as successful or isn't as low risk as somebody else. So if she'd worked with a few bigger people and they hadn't had the outcome perhaps she had, and that's the thing with all healthcare providers, without sitting down and having a conversation, I'll never know what their true choices are. But I mean, it's their choice to make at the end of the day. It's just that I think just talking about it, and for them to even be aware that perhaps they have their own biases. I had a chat with my GP recently about, because I was on this research panel. Somebody was doing some research, and I was one of the women that was helping, with some of the questions in there. And it was on plus size women in birth and pregnancy and how we face discrimination. And I had a chat with my GP, and I said, "You've never shamed me or made me feel uncomfortable." She's like, "Well, I'm a size inclusive GP. I've done like extra training on it and stuff." And she's like, "You are healthy. Like, we do all the tests. You don't have any diseases. You don't have any of those things that we're worried about." And so I think rather than judging someone as whatever it is that they're judging, maybe they perceive you as lazy, that you wouldn't be able to tolerate the pain, that you just couldn't tolerate the labour. There probably are some extra factors that come into play. I know in the hospital they were worried about cutting through the extra fat tissue, the extra fat to have an emergency C-section, for example. Apparently the junior obstetricians were not comfortable or confident doing it on their own on a fatter body. So you'd probably they reckon they want to have at least a more senior person available. So some hospitals don't have seniors working all the time. That was one of the challenges I had in the hospital system. There are some other things that you might be higher risk for, but when I look at the risk, it's one of those examples of, it's just the relative risk. It's not like, it's like it might be doubled, but it's really so minor that you wouldn't even, sort of just, think about it.
I suppose it's the same as when they, say someone's really petite and, there's that, your hips are too small, the baby's not going to be able to fit through. It's the same thing. Like, it's just like everybody's different and every baby's different. And you would think that body would create a baby that would be able to birth it, like regardless of its size and shape. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? But
it is really interesting, yeah. And that is like, I'm only a 5'1" frame, while I'm a bigger person with, extra fat on me. My frame is only 5 foot, very, very small. I would have loved to have had some of those comments. And also the other one that I love to get is like that smaller women don't like is, oh, you're so big. Your belly's so big. I'm like,
yeah.
you can tell that I'm pregnant. Like, come and give me some. Come here, my belly is so big. Because I am short in the third trimester, you can definitely tell. But, those are the things that us plus size women go through. That is the polar opposite of smaller women, but it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Discrimination.
It's discrimination. But isn't it fascinating? Like, obviously, it's not great to go through the challenges as you're going through them, but then afterwards you just gain so much wisdom and power and strength within you that, no wonder now you're on that trajectory where you are the one, being that guiding light for women. And you would not have been able to be in that position without going through what you've gone through. And like, it's almost like a, blessing in disguise kind of thing. I mean, people used to say it to me, oh, if you hadn't had a cesarean and then had a home birth, you wouldn't have felt what these other women are feeling. Like, maybe this film wouldn't have been as good and blah, blah, blah. But at the time you're like, really? But did I have to go through all that just to, have this part of my life? But yeah, it's really the only way you can end up thinking about it, isn't it? You got to take the gold with, all the mining that you had to do to get it, kind of thing.
It is the positive mindset spin around, and it is a really powerful one. And then I think all the women are still having to go through it, and for every one of us, there's they're not doing that, so they're having to ignore it or just get on with life, and so it really is about being the voice for them and sharing those stories to give them the inspiration. It's really interesting that people came to you and said, oh, if she can do it, I can do it. And that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, dude, if I can do it, you can do it, because I'm so large. And I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, if they can see, because in our society, I'm like, honestly, in our society, we don't look at bigger people as capable or able to do things, right? We do have a lot of discrimination. I mean, I even have some of those thoughts because of how I was raised. And so if they can see me doing it, anyone can go, oh, she can do it, I can do it. But I was looking at women who I watch a lot of taboo shows and watch, interesting things. I saw a woman who had no arms and legs give birth vaginally. And I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. Of course I can. If she can, she was doing amazing things like taking her children to school, brushing her children's hair, looking after them and caring for them. I thought, shit, if she can do all these things, what am I complaining about? I can do that. So it really is about looking at other people in other situations who are doing those things that you want to achieve and think, yeah, I can do it. And that's really what I was mastering through, like, calling in through my pregnancy. If my mum can do it, I have to do it, you know what I mean? She can have a natural vaginal birth with no pain meds. I'm going to show her. It's not about showing her, but it's like, if all the women in my lineage have done it, because every woman in my lineage would have done it, because there wasn't any pain meds, there wasn't any cesareans hundreds of years ago, I can do it. That's all the evidence I need to know that I can do it. If they can, I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess that's why you've got your podcast as well. Having all those women's stories, like, week after week. Anybody who's had a cesarean can just go in and listen, and surely they're going to find someone they resonate with.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because every woman has something unique to share. Even though I'm up to episode like 125 or something, and I've worked with women, I've heard so many stories, and I'm in the VBAC Homebirth communities, and it's like there's every day, like even today, I woke up and watched a birth story, a twin birth story, a home birth, free birth, 39-hour labor in between. I'm always amazed at these like different things that happen in birth, and I think, there's always something to excite me and something new to share. And I had this lady who came on the podcast. She said, "Oh, my story's like really boring. Like there's nothing really exciting." And as we got on, I was like, there was like so many amazing new things that I've never even heard before. It's like it never gets old. It's just amazing. And every woman is unique and her experience and her situation is so different that, yeah, I mean, you've got women birthing at home having 5.7 kilo babies, 5.2 kilo babies, and they're freaking out in the hospital about 4 kilo babies. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like women having VBAC home births with these bigger babies, and it's amazing.
Yeah, what I love about it too, it's like birth is just so extraordinary, but so ordinary as well. And like we're not special, like you just got me thinking about how we always get this label of like, you're so brave, you're this, you're that. And it's like, well, none of us are. Like all the stories are incredible, but we're not special. So of course, we can all do it because that's how we're designed to birth, you know?
It's just, I mean, it's no surprise because every movie, I watched a movie the other day and I said I just turned around to my kids and I said, this is not real. This is not what happens in reality. I mean, it does if you go to the hospital, I said to them. This is probably what will happen to you, but this is not reality. And so, she's got her feet in the stirrups and she's screaming and she's panting and blah, blah, blah. It did end up in a C-section. So, I mean, that was a true representation of probably, 1 in 3 women are going to experience, but it really does. That's not my reality. That's not what I see in my feeds and what I hear the stories of women having. They're like black and white a lot of the time. And home birth is such a different experience. Like for me, it was peace and heaven on earth versus not great.
Yeah. I'm wondering, Ashley, because you've got the 3 children. So the first 2, for those that haven't watched the video yet, the first 2 were obviously Caesarean in hospital, and the third was a home birth, free birth. And do you notice like a difference? I mean, obviously, where a child is placed in the family, they're just a different person. But do you notice a difference between like the traumatic births of your first 2 versus the beautiful healing birth of your third?
As in with the
like
children?
Their personality, with the kids, as like at parenting them and observing them growing.
My free birth baby's 3.5, but she's one feisty little chick. She is so feisty, like she's a daredevil. And people say, oh, it's a third baby, but actually I come from a family of 3 girls as well, and my little sister was not like that. She was doing our bidding, and we were like, because I was the eldest, we're like, get us a drink, do this, and she was doing everything. And actually she was the C-section baby in our family, and it's really interesting. I always say that my daughter chose to be in our family because she was going to be a free birth baby, and she had to have the wisdom and the courage to know that that was going to be her path. I called her Starlight when she was inside me, and I had to have faith that, she knew the path, like whoever they were going to be, I didn't know, but that they had the path. They chose this knowing that mum and dad were choosing this for them. But she beats her sisters up. She's 3.5. She beats them up. She is, something else. So she's amazing, and I always say it's because of the way she was born.
Yeah, I can relate to that, Ashley, as well. My little Emma, who's 2, the one that was in my tummy when we were interviewing you, she's exactly the same. Since she was a baby, like probably 6 months, 7 months old, my oldest Jack would like yell at her like, no, stop doing that. And she would just stand up for herself. Before she could even talk, she was just like, rah, rah, rah. Like I would be yelling back at him. And yeah, you're right. She's like 100% up at the top of the monkey bars. Like she's just fearless. It's such a different personality.
Yeah. And I think it's the way you parent, like because you're leaving the birth feeling really empowered as well. So it's like, they really pick up on you're still the same person, right, for those postpartum months. And so like, I guess they're transitioning, like you're showing them the way as a different version of yourself than if you are traumatized from your birth. Like I wonder how that impacts as well, like, parenting.
I think
from trauma.
definitely I've thought about nurture and nature a lot over the years because my firstborn's highly sensitive and so am I. And I thought that mine was trauma from trauma. But now that I see her and how she was she was born like this, I can't help but think there's a lot of nature in there. And then I look at some of like my middle child, she's very similar to my sister, like so similar. It's almost like she birthed her herself. And then I looked at my husband and his brother is like his uncle, and it's like there's so much nature in there that I mean we don't even have the answers, but I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know who my little one is like. She's only 3.5, so we'll see how she goes. But I'm more than happy for her to be like that. She needs to be fierce in this world. I'm trying to teach my 2 children not to be people pleasers. I've been a people pleaser my whole life. And that's kind of my mission. I want them to have enough self-esteem to not feel like they're being a mean bitch or anything like that. And so I'm hoping that my third one won't be like that and we can just maneuver her in a way that she's pretty good though. So I think we'll be fine. Lots of love and kisses.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot together, haven't we, Amanda? And I feel like we've sort of come up with a theory that there's definitely nature. So you're definitely born with your series of traits, but there's also usually, if there's, there might be an event that kind of triggers a certain sensitivity or a certain, challenging trait that you might be experiencing. And I think that's so true. So while you might have this, sensitive gene, if you also couple that with either traumatic event or, not a great childhood, not a supportive childhood, then that turns into anxiety, depression, personality disorders. Whereas if it was coupled with, an amazing birth and, really supportive home environment, you might then, that sensitivity might become an artist, instead of, a neurotic. so yeah, I think it's both. Yeah.
I'm really interested in like childhood trauma as well, so I've watched a lot of stuff on that. And then like all of us have had some sort of trauma through our childhood, like even if we come from amazing upbringings as being at school, and trauma can be like it could impact. One person could go through a huge thing and that could be trauma, but somebody could experience something really small that other people would navigate quite easily. But it could be like the same, it could do the same damage or the impact as this huge thing. So, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. We'll never know the answers, but it's interesting and fun to have those conversations and theorize and, have a bit of fun with it. Hey.
Totally.
So
totally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Ashley, well, 2 things really. One, what kind of things and what kind of services, courses, things that you offer to women at the moment, and then who might be your clientele. So if people are listening, what kind of women do you usually help and how do you help them?
So I'll start with the kind of women that I work with and then I'll go into how I help them. So the women that I work with are basically what I consider little Ashleys. And so I love working with Ashleys. They are highly sensitive women. They usually have the same fears and worries that I had through my free birth experience. They may have had some of the prejudices that I had as well. A lot of them have experienced unneeded, unnecessary C-sections and they felt forced into those choices or that they didn't have enough information to make a different choice at the time. They are usually highly sensitive women who, feel things really deeply. They want to have that hand-holding experience and somebody to really care about them, nurture them, listen to them, hear them, and support them. So we build like a really good relationship through the pregnancy, getting to know each other. And I'm like another member of their team. A lot of the women I work with usually have a midwife or a doula if they're free birthing. They usually have a whole team around them. And I'm just one of those extra players in the team. So they're always usually a woman who's had a caesarean section and they are either planning a home birth or a free birth, or now I've started working with women who are having hospital births as well. And so it's added that extra layer of women who are having hospital births too, who may know that home birth is a really great choice, but they don't have the funds for home birth, or their partner's not super supportive on that idea, or they're still feeling a little bit of fear and they just want to do the hospital thing. But they're usually quite open-minded and love information, love learning all the facts and information, reading all the books and doing all those things. So yeah, it's my special kind of person. Yeah. So the services is pretty much I work with women through pregnancy, pretty much what I said, high touch sort of VIP support. And it's more like a relationship of any questions that they kind of have when it comes to birth fears, any of those sorts of things, setting up their birthing environment. And I also work as a birth doula. So here in Queensland, I've started working Brisbane, Logan and Gold Coast, attending births for those women as well. And I have an online home birth program, which is all, it's not called a VBAC home birth program, but it's all VBAC women planning home births. And that's pretty much the same as working with me one-on-one, but in a group environment and group capacity. And then I've also just released the VBAC Village, which is a really low-cost, affordable way for women to get that VBAC knowledge who are birthing in a hospital system, who want the statistics and information, and not have to pay much money for it. It's like $7 a month at the moment. So I've got a number of ways for women to work with me, which is really amazing, and it feels really good to be able to offer those services.
And that's just all on your website, hey?
Yeah, so everything's on my website. It's easy for people, but if anyone has any questions or wants to know how they can work with me, or because it can get confusing, it's easy for me to say it, but it can be confusing for people to go, what do I want? Send me a DM on Insta, because I'm more than happy to jump on calls and chat with people or talk through DMs and things like that.
Awesome. We'll put all your details in the show notes, but I'm pretty sure your website's just like ashleywinning.com, isn't it?
That's super easy, yeah.
Yeah, that's easy. Awesome. Yeah, well, I was thinking as well, maybe you could talk us through some of those success stories. So the women that you have worked with, what kind of things that they've, achieved through, as you've walked along beside them.
Okay, so I'm working with another client at the moment who her name's Sarah, and I can say that because she has shared her story in my podcast. And she had two planned home births and with the same midwife, and her first one ended up in a C-section, and her second home birth also turned into another C-section. So she was a woman that always wanted to have a home birth. And when I started working with her, it's different to work with a woman who's had a C-section and then, you're having the first VBAC, for example. But when you're working with a woman who has had a planned home birth, the statistics in that are not helpful. Like, your chance of having a C-section when you have a planned home birth is like 20%, like 20% chance, 10% chance or something like that you're going to end up in a C-section. So the things that I would tell other women were not really helpful for this client, because she knew all of that information. She was the anomaly. Like, why me, right? Why have I had C-sections when I've paid the midwife? I've done this, I've done all these things, right? So we had to work a lot through her mindset and working through releasing the fear, really going over those fears a lot and really talking about them. She had put a wall up with her midwife because she had gone through these experiences, and she'd felt that maybe her midwife had failed her because she'd supported her through those. And looking back, maybe the midwife could have, suggested this or, supported her a little bit more. And, that's quite normal as well for people to, look at the people in their team and see where things could have been different. Especially, it's easier to look at other people before we look at ourselves as well, I think. And so through the experience of working together, I think there was a lot of reflection, and I helped her break down some of those barriers with her midwife so that she could have a better relationship and communication with the midwife. I'm not going to be at the birth. So they have wonderful relationships with me, but I'm not going to be there. They need to build relationships with the people who are going to be there. And so I find sometimes there are a few walls up with women who have had traumatic births before, or outcomes that, were not what they wanted. But she ended up having her home birth, and
Oh,
so it was
wow.
a home birth after 2 caesareans. And she reflected after that experience and said she felt that she was putting up a lot of the blocks herself, that there was a lot of mental blocks, and her midwife had tried to communicate that through to her through the pregnancy, but she just wasn't open to receiving some of that guidance and wisdom. And through working with me, she was able to see we had other people on the team. There was a beautiful witchy massage therapist who used to be a midwife, who was like giving her some like spiritual guidance while she was massaging her and stuff. And so I would just like repeat those things back to her, and she was working with an EFT tapping guide to help with some of those things, and then she was working with me, and so she finally had her birth. It wasn't the pain-free birth that is often touted on Instagram. That's why I like to keep it real, because for her it was like a ripping. I feel like it was like a ripping of this new person, this experience, and
Yeah.
it was really raw, and she was really angry, and she was just like, she had her birth, and she's having another home birth. She's working with me again.
Wow.
She's come back to me. She's having another home birth, and so we're working through some new extra challenges and fears this time. So that's one of my amazing clients who I've
Wow.
seen grow so much. She's a highly sensitive woman, and she's just amazing. She's about to have her fourth baby. What a powerhouse of a woman. I have a beautiful other client, Lizzie, who she did have a VBAC in hospital, and she felt traumatized by that VBAC. And she felt let down by midwives that she had hired as well. So she had hired midwives. She's American based, and she hired some midwives, and I think it was something to do with the dates, going over dates. So it's not the midwife, they have to work within their requirements and their registration and things like that. But she ended up having a VBAC in hospital, and she felt really traumatized, and it wasn't that redemptive healing birth that she'd hoped for. But she didn't tell anyone that she was pregnant. I've had a few clients who have not told anyone that they're pregnant. They haven't told their family or anything until right at the end. She didn't tell her family until right at the end of her pregnancy, even though she was still seeing them. She was a plus size mama too, and she ended up having a free birth. So she was hiding it from everyone that she was doing this thing to protect her space, protect herself. She didn't want to work with a midwife, although she was open to it. She decided to free birth at home with her husband, and she had the most amazing, positive, healing, beautiful experience. She just is. I've seen her because I've been working with her for a few years. She did my home birth group mentoring. Now she's in my village, and we do one-on-one work as well. So it's that long relationship that I get to see these women, that I might work with them before pregnancy and into pregnancy, and then even afterwards, because we don't cut off that relationship of seeing the growth and the changes from who they were, the questions and fears they had, to I just did that. Like, I did that, and I'm amazing and powerful, and having different relationships and experiences. As you mentioned, Amanda, um, I have seen some of the mums that I've worked with, they do have different relationships and experiences in postpartum. They can be better mothers when they're not having to deal with that trauma, and they're not suffering so much. So one thing that this mama said to me is that her postpartum has been just amazing. So it's been so much easier. She's been able to bond with her child easier. So that is really significant when you think about a mother caring for her child, and being able to show up really confident and capable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. They're two completely different stories, but it makes sense. It's just like having the right people on your team, whether it's, you've got an EFT practitioner, you've got a doula, you've got yourself, you've got like the spiritual healer. Like, she just wanted everybody there on her side, which is perfect for her. And then this other mama who didn't tell anybody she was pregnant and just wanted to have a free birth. And they were both exactly what those women wanted. And that's the key, isn't it? It's just like, it's got to be what the woman wants.
It has to be, and there's no pressure. I think sometimes people think that I think everyone should have a free birth because I had a free birth. And it's like, I didn't even want to have a free birth. By the end of it, I did, because I had to talk myself into it, didn't I? Because it was that or hospital. So I had to like really work myself up to confidence. But it wasn't my first choice, and it wasn't something that I really wanted to do. I'm glad that I did. And when I had it, it wasn't a scary experience going through. I felt really supported. It was a very empowering, or I wouldn't even say empowering, it was a very powerful experience for me. And one thing that I notice with women who do choose to birth with a midwife is that they do, and not that this is a bad thing, because as Rachel Reed says, we've been birthing with women for years, for a whole line of, we've always had women in our birth space, but I love that I can look at myself and say, I did that. And I think that's one thing I would like to see more women who birth with a midwife turn around, or even with a doula, turn around. It wasn't that maneuver. It wasn't that position that they coached you into or recommended or whatever, but the power of your body that is done like 10 hours or 15 hours or 20 hours of labor. Give yourself some credit for the amazing stuff that your body's done. So watching women when they say, I did it, is so like, yes, you did. And I love that recognition from women when they can see, when they've got that awareness that they did it and they're powerful and they are amazing.
Yeah, totally. And it's one of my pet peeves is when I hear, that doctor delivered that baby. It's like, no, that mum did it. That woman did it.
Yeah.
She did all the
Don't take the credit.
Don't take the credit for that, And it's women taking back that, no, I did it. Whether there's a doctor in the room, whether there's a midwife in the room, you're the one doing it. You and your baby together.
Yeah. And I think Rachel Reed when we were chatting with Rachel Reed last week, and also I had this conversation with my midwife as well. I'm like, do you ever get like her feelings about a woman giving birth before you get there? And they're like, no way. Like that's that woman like taking, like knowing that they can do it. And, and they're just doing it without us because we've like supported them along that journey so much that they feel so confident and so like trusting within themselves and their body that they can just do the thing without needing me there. I just loved that, because I think if you're preparing for a home birth with midwives, you need to be prepared to free birth because it happens all the time. Birth all the time. So
absolutely, I think it's important too. After I spoke with Catherine Bell, talking about birth mapping, and she said that there's a free birth plan. I was like, that makes so much sense. Like, of course, every woman should be planning, and it's not just the planning, it's the knowledge that comes with planning for a free birth.
Yeah.
Because you then understand how birth works. Like, you understand the things that may be required. And I think that these are just basic life skills that every person should know, just like CPR, because we're all surrounded by birthing people, and the amount of people, the stories you hear from people birthing on the side of the road, how much more powerful would it be for them not freaking out, oh my goodness, what's happening? And for them to know this is a natural, normal process and it's going to be okay most of the time,
No one's dying.
Such a good idea. Imagine if every woman planned for free birth, like whether they were even birthing in hospital, because that can happen too. Even if you plan to go to the hospital, it might happen too fast to get in the car, etc.
Exactly.
Like, imagine if every woman had that plan, so she knew her body, physiologically, hormonally, knew how to do basic resus and things like that on a baby. Like, then those women might then go, well, actually, do I even want to go to the hospital?
Yeah. And I even, with my VBAC village, I've started talking to women about preparing, like they're going to hospital, right? But one of the things that hospital birth, women who are planning hospital births, they're told in hypnobirthing classes and all those sorts of classes, stay home as long as possible. So if you're going to stay home as long as possible, why not just plan a home birth? And then when it's time, because they all say to me, I'm going to go in when the head's out, right? So you could be in labour for like days, 20 hours, 15 hours. So why not have a birth pool? Why not have the lights and all of those things?
Yes.
You can they can still pack all that stuff up and bring it, or have a second set to take with you. But why not have the beauty of all those things? They might not let you in a birthing pool at hospital, especially if you're over a certain BMI or kilos. They won't let you. But that doesn't mean you can't have that experience at home.
Yeah.
I wish that I had at least that knowledge with my first baby. It would have been such a different experience for me if that was like normalized, that you're just preparing at home. You understand what's normal, rather than this contraction app. This app's telling you what to do and you're focused on this thing, pressing this button. That's so the complete opposite when you have a home birth. But there's so much sacredness and so much celebration in the home birth route. I'm like, just because you're having a hospital birth doesn't mean you can't have a mother's blessing. Like, I'm introducing all of these things that the home birth mums get that all of these other mums are missing out on. I'm like, hey, hang on, why haven't we been doing this? And why is this not normal? So that's been really fun to introduce women to that sort of, just because you're planning a hospital birth doesn't mean you can't have all of these other wonderful things that the home birth community seems to be celebrating and enjoying.
It's so much easier. Like, there's so much that you miss out from, even just like the postnatal care as well, like having someone like a midwife. Like, if you have a hospital birth, you can have a midwife that comes to your home postpartum to care. And just having someone to talk to who's not a visitor, who wants, do you know what I mean? That you can talk deeply about how you're feeling and your emotional stuff, and like breastfeeding issues, or like, I've got this gunk coming out of my vag. Like, what's that? Is that normal? Like, just someone to talk to about, like, all those things. I feel so sad for women who have no support that we just get, I guess, because we know that it's valuable and we pay for it, and that's the reason why we have that care. But I just wish there was more education around, all of those other things. It's not just the place of birth. It's like the mode of care. It's the care that you receive that I think is sometimes the most impactful, is just having, that person that you know along that journey with you, antenatally and postnatally, as well.
And that's what I would have loved to have had, Amanda. That was the dream that was sold to me that I really wanted to have, but wasn't available. But now it is so much more available for home birth mums who are having it after caesarean section. There are midwives supporting women after 2 caesarean. I've interviewed so many women who have had special scars on the podcast. So, and that's Australia-wide, worldwide. It is amazing that it is opening up for more women to have that beautiful support and care. And there's nothing more, I don't think there's anything more special than having that continuity of care. And that's what, as a highly sensitive person, do I want some rando that doesn't know me, that I've got to have these personal conversations with, who is not enjoying this because I'm just another one of the 100 people they're going to see this week? It doesn't make any sense to me. So for me, the value of paying that money is well worth it. I ended up paying similar amounts anyways to have a doula and pay for all the stuff. It's just, it wasn't the same sort of experience as having that midwife come. I had to have fragmented sort of GP care and this sort of stuff, and a bunch of fear, but the fear was still maybe 10% of what I would have got in the hospital system. So for me, it was still amazing. I just had to find, and so anyone who's like me, you have to find your community through other means, like working with someone like me, having an amazing doula that is really high touch, like finding the right fit for you, home birth community groups. You can really create that environment if a midwife's not available for you.
Yeah. And I guess like to change it culturally, it really is going to come from the grassroots. It really is, you know, all women taking responsibility for their own birth and, you know, organizing and resourcing and researching the care that they actually want and need. And then it's like the institutions will have to follow suit, because it just doesn't work the other way around, does it? You can't demand a business or an institution to change when it doesn't benefit them. You know, they're
No,
happy with the status quo. So it will take all of us changing that narrative and really taking ownership of the birth of our babies.
it does. And, you know, movies like this one that you guys have done hopefully will help other people to see that there is a different choice. And I was the weirdo having a home birth in my family, right? Before COVID, I was like the weirdo. And by chance, it's turned out that my siblings, who I don't really know, they live over in America. One's gone on to have a home birth after Caesarean. One had a home birth. They're homeschooling. And then my cousins in the UK, so I've got a cousin who's a month or two older than me, and she started following my Instagram page. And I remember when I was pregnant, when I had my second baby, and she'd come over to Australia, and I was saying she was trying to get pregnant, and I was like, don't do obstetrician. If I have another baby, I'm definitely going home birth. And she was like, you're crazy. And I knew in the NHS they could get publicly funded home births. So I was like, just don't do it. Like, I mean, it's so hard to say that to someone who's a first-time parent. And I was like, don't do it. And so she went down her path of induction and had a vaginal birth, but it was a really long, painful experience. And then she started following my account, and then started following other people's accounts, and then she started talking to me and about it, and she ended up choosing, like, it was so funny because even my uncle and auntie were like, she told them, and after COVID their whole mindset changed, and he's like, oh, I've got a doula friend. Like, how random. Like, my uncle, he's like got a doula friend. He's like, oh, well, maybe I will have a home birth. So she ends up, you know, having this home birth with this doula and HS. And then her brother just recently, him and his partner just had a home birth. And they're all over, like, Ashley's in this home birth film. It's coming out in the UK. Like, telling my sister over there. And my sister's like, he's like, yeah, you know, it's amazing. Rah, rah, rah. So it's so, my whole family life, even though I don't really see those people, it's like, holy moly, like, it really, things can change just from one person doing something and inspiring, or even planting that seed of, like, okay, well, I've gone down this path, had a maybe not a great outcome. Maybe what Ashley was saying was maybe she's on something. And then maybe her other friend that was saying the same thing, maybe she's onto something, and then the evolution of that. And then, there's this amazing movie you should watch. And I know your movie's like so home birth positive and amazing, and all those stories, and you put a lot of birth trauma stories and what can happen. I think first-time mums and dads really need to see that. I'm working on my sister at the moment for when she has her kid. I said, I saw in that movie, which when it comes out for her to watch, I will be sitting down with her and watching it, because she's been all, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. But now that my cousin's had a home birth, she's like, oh, I'm going to be having a home birth. I'm just not telling my partner until we get closer. I'll work on him. And I said, well, there was a midwife that gave one of the dads a bottle of beer in the morning after they'd had the baby.
Yeah.
So that's definitely going to work in the favour of that. I think that's one of the best things I've seen. Dads are going to be all over that.
They're so easy to please, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they don't have to leave the house. They can be chilling at home. You can go to bed if you need to, like in your comfortable bed, not on one of those horrible seats. Like, amazing.
We should do a little like a dad reel, Banks, where it's like all the pros for dads having a home birth.
Father's Day coming up.
Oh,
great
put
idea.
that on your list.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
But also, Banks, haven't we released the film in the US now? What's happening?
Yeah. So did I tell you? I can't remember. I think I told you it was happening. So on Sunday, I released the link where people can request a screening in the US now. Yeah, and it's a different system too. Like they actually earn money over there for hosting a screening. So, yeah, they can fundraise for an organization, or they can just take the money themselves for their time. So it's a bit of a different platform to Demand. It's called Gather, GATHR, and very similar. Works a similar way to Demand, but they have that
if you're
that
in the
option.
US.
Yeah.
Some money.
I think Demand used to do it, but I don't think they found it successful for some reason, that model, so they changed it back to the normal model. But I guess there's just more people over there maybe, so that works for them. And maybe the cost of the cinema is different over there too. And so but that's how it works over there. So same as Demand, you request it as a community member and then host it in the cinema, and then next year 2025 we will be releasing it online throughout the world, so can't wait for that.
That's great.
I can't wait for that.
That is great. I can't wait to be sending everyone to watch that. Are you going to be doing some sort of affiliate program too?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, well, I'll look into that.
Thought of that.
First time did one, I think it was like,
what do they do?
I don't know. I think it was like, I don't know, 15% or something. I don't know what they ended up doing for their affiliate. But so basically they did this thing where they pay out a little bit of money for the film. And I think the film was like $10 or something for people to watch. And then I just put it in my groups. And, I am more waiting for this one to come out, guys. I'm really looking forward to this one because this one's more aligned with my audience. I think it's really focused on the home birth scene, which I just cannot wait to get it. I think there's some amazing interviews in there. I just think it was such an amazing a video, like celebrating home birth. Like you guys just did such a wonderful job. I've seen it twice that you guys have invited me to. Thank you very much. And cried through the whole thing. Like, I couldn't help myself being a highly sensitive little me. It was just
I still
so
cry.
beautiful.
I've seen it like hundreds of times, and I still cry. Actually, one of my most memorable moments of the film actually is you, Ashley, saying like how there's a bit more context to it, but how you were saying that it took you like years to say that you felt like you birthed your babies, and like oh my gosh, like that part, that statement is just like cuts you so deep, and I think a lot of people resonated with that message as well, because
I felt that 100%, and I thought that was the only one that felt that. And when you said it, when we interviewed you, I was like, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, I tried explaining that to an obstetrician in the hospital, and she turned around to me and made it about herself. She said to me, "So what are you saying? Because I had C-sections, I didn't birth my children?" And I was like, no, this is not about you. This is how I feel. I'm not saying that women who have C-sections can't say that they birth their children. I'm trying to explain to you why this is so important for me to have a vaginal birth. But it's really hard to explain that to somebody who has chosen to have C-sections, who's chosen to do C-sections for her living. And so it's really important to understand your audience when you're having these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But Ellie, I have heard a lot of people say, that they didn't feel like that they birthed their children, they birthed their babies, and it's soul crushing. You know, to hear those stories from women and when I hear their story of having a home birth or having a vaginal birth, it is like they're so happy. Like it's a completely different experience, and that is being robbed from women. And we're told to just suck it up.
Be grateful even.
Be quiet, be grateful that you've got a healthy baby and just get on with it. And it's not good enough, because that experience that I had at home I will remember it forever. I don't care what any obstetrician says, like when they're 18, I've seen one of those obstetricians say, on their 18th birthday, you're not going to look back and think about the birth. My mum
yes, you are. You exactly will.
My mum told me that birth story every birthday. Like, I know about my birth.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a bad birth, but, it was, my mum remembers it because it was an important time.
Yeah.
And I will remember. We all will. And they just don't get it. And we do. And so it's life-changing. But I've got 3 daughters, and they understand home birth is an option. And I just thank God for the experience I have. Although it may have been a really challenging and hard experience, it was for them. I think about them. I think they're going to be given an opportunity and a chance for something that I didn't have. And the other women that you like, that watch your movie, that hear you speak on your podcast, that hear any of us speaking about this stuff, they have the opportunities that we didn't necessarily have. And, Amanda, I want to thank you so much as well, because you have always had home births, haven't you?
Both of mine, yeah.
And so you're doing extraordinary work. You're not coming from a space of trauma. I feel like coming from a space of trauma adds an extra element of push, but you're like coming from a space of love. I feel like, for this experience that you had, and that's extraordinary that caught you so much, and that you're still on this journey to, work and do all the things that you've been doing for many, many years in this space. So thank you very much for being a voice for women in this space, because it is very important and very needed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, like, for me, it's just shows how transformational birth is, like, the reason why, like, I'm finished having my own babies. I'm definitely done, but like, that birth shook me, like my last one particularly shook me so much that I'm like, everyone deserves this as an option, and to avoid the trauma and go straight for it as a first time. Like, that's, I would love to see that more. It's particularly, it's obviously extremely empowering when you've come from a place of trauma and choose to have birth at home. But fuck, imagine the world if we didn't have that shit to deal with before, like, heading into another birth.
Absolutely. And, I work with second, third time mums. So people say to first time mums, when they're choosing home birth, like, that's such a courageous thing to do. But in comparison to somebody who has, in their mind, failed, and being a first time mum, I think, is so much easier than coming from a space of having that traumatic experience and all those things. And I think we don't give enough credit to mums who are coming in after birth, after cesarean, because there's so much fear and so much worry and concern. I think it should be more normalized that home birth is an option for first time mums. You don't have to have your first birth in hospital. You don't have to have a trial to make sure you can do it, because there's a really high chance that you're probably not going to be able to do it in a hospital setting. So why would you put yourself against that? Why not just go for the gold? Go for the gold standard, you know what I mean? And if you can't do that, go for a birth centre birth, Get a midwife to support you through your care. If you want to birth in a hospital setting, at least have some of those things in place to give yourself the best chance and best experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, the brave comment just cracks me up every time. So I'm like, I wasn't brave because my first baby. I'm like, man, I was scared. There was no bravery whatsoever. I'm like, I'm not going to that fucking place. Like, I hate that place. I am staying home because I am horrified of going in there and getting sliced open. So,
imagine if it was the other way around. Imagine if it was like, I'm going to have a hospital birth. Oh, you're brave.
Yeah.
It is like that. I used to, because it is brave to have a free birth, right, and a home birth, in the sense that it's taboo and it's not normal in our society. But when you're in the home birth community and you've had a home birth and you've experienced it, you're like, holy moly, that was so much better than the hospital birth experience. And then you start to go, you're brave. Like, I literally look at people when they say that to me, I'm like, no, you don't get it. Like, you're the brave one. Like, if you could switch around, the fears are so, like, no, it's so much. But that story isn't out there yet. So eventually maybe it will be. But I mean, how do you stay hopeful, ladies, when the rates have just been going down for home birth and for vaginal birth and that for years. You look at the statistics, and I try to stay really positive and hope that everything we're doing is helpful.
Yeah.
And I see a lot more women home birthing than I used to see. So are the rates going up? Do you know anything about the rates or anything?
I think midwives aren't reporting the data properly because, I was talking to Mel Jackson about this, and she's saying that can't remember what year she was talking about, but she submitted, she's like a data nerd, right? So she submitted all her stats, and she looked at the results when it came out on the AIH table, and she's like, that's like 3/4 of my caseload. Like, what the fuck? All the midwives, there is no way that data is correct, because for those that don't know, like home birth midwives, you don't have like the software like you do at hospital to enter all the data. Like, you have to submit your data for collection. And so if I'm not blaming midwives, well, I guess I am in a way, but if there's not enough midwives submitting their data, then it's not shown of the actual home birth rates. And obviously free birth rates aren't recorded either. So I think it's actually is increasing, but the data is not, the stats aren't reflective of what's actually happening. I am hopeful. I do see a bit of a shift, even though, we've got all these issues at the moment with the insurance and things, but I am quite hopeful that will be rectified with consumer engagement and, with the inclusion of some publicly funded home birth programs that will probably raise the awareness of home birth. And then I think for those of us that are invested in the home birth community, we know the difference between a private midwife caring for you at a home birth versus a publicly funded home birth program. And we're still going to choose private midwifery. But then, publicly funded home birth is there for people that are on the fence that, want maybe perhaps a bit more clinical care, or, they're on the fence. And then but like those programs are for those people, and those with, I guess, financial barriers as well. And I feel like over time, we're never going to be a majority, but I feel like we will definitely have better access over time. Yeah, I am hopeful.
Especially with social media. I think the more women that share their stories on social media, the more it's going to get out there. And then there is a bit of an, influence to that, where women see things being done, beautifully, I guess, and then, you sort of get attracted to it. I think that actually will work in our favor a little bit. Social media can be a really good thing, but I'm definitely hopeful. Definitely.
And Hilary Duff, fourth home birth. I mean, second, third home birth over there.
Yeah. I think it would be good for us to put together a list of home birth celebrities, and I would love to find some home birth after Caesarean. I know the Queen was a home birth after Caesarean. I don't know if it really is a proper home birth, considering the home that she lived in, and she would have had all the doctors. But I still do love the idea of little old Lizzie having a home birth, even if she was put under and wasn't awake for it.
It was still at home.
It was still at home. Something special though.
Didn't Beyonce have a quote unquote home birth, but she had like the hospital built into her home?
Yeah, and I'm not sure it was a vaginal birth. I
don't know.
I'm not sure she ended up doing. Yeah, but I'm not sure that's it. That's where we have to be careful of what sort of experience, because it sounds like they had a lot of things going on happening. It would be really nice to know, and I would love to interview some of these people, because imagine if some women have talked about breastfeeding. There's been some that have been really passionate and sharing about breastfeeding and breastfeeding on set and all that sort of stuff, which is great for the breastfeeding movement, which is stupid to have to say we've got to have a movement.
A real thing.
Having a movement for women having vaginal births and breastfeeding. But it would be awesome to see more celebrities speaking out about home birth and these sorts of topics and making it more normalised.
Yeah.
I really wanted Meghan Markle to have a home birth, because she was planning a home birth and they were ridiculing her. They ridicule her about everything, but unfortunately she didn't. So maybe she did for her next one. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to contact Hilary Duff. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
That's on my goal.
That's on
I'm working on it.
Well, it's time for us to wrap up now, but I just wanted to say just a huge thank you, Ashley, obviously for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom, for being in the film. That was just so inspirational and so many people resonated with you, but also just the work you've done since then. Like, it just sounds amazing. Like, this is years worth of podcast stories that you've got up for free for women. You've got amazing, very economical resources on your website that people can take advantage of. Like, imagine having this woman in your team,
amazing.
This powerhouse behind you. You're like the ultimate cheerleader, especially for VBACs. So just a huge thank you, Ashley.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for involving me and for allowing me to share my story, because it's been great. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.